Welcome to Encouraging Wellness, where we shed light on the plethora of holistic healing and wellness methods so you can give yourself the power to ask why and become bigger than the condition you are dealing with or the illness you are currently fighting. Join Pamela Wirth as she sits down with doctors, medical experts, healthcare practitioners, and those with unique healing stories to dissect groundbreaking practices that combine traditional Western medicine with alternative modalities. Hear conversations that empower you to go beyond hurtful stigmas, outdated practices, and unnecessary labels, guiding you towards a healthier and happier you. Here, we highlight your true worth and help unleash your inner courage. Now your host, Pamela.
Hi, this is Pamela Wirth from the Hello Health and Encouraging Wellness podcast. And today with me, I have Fran Garton, and she is a pain reduction coach. Fran, thank you for being here. And there's so many other things that you do. So if you wouldn't mind kind of expanding on that.
Sure. Well, hello, and thanks for having me. It's great to be here. Yes, I'm a pain reduction coach. I am also a body positive personal trainer, and I am a fibromyalgia warrior. And I have lots of other certifications and stuff, like we all do, right? But those are the main things that I do.
So that's pretty amazing. So tell me a little bit about kind of where you spend a lot of focus, where you tend to start with folks, how you get to kind of help them understand what the root of the problem is and where to go next and how to kind of help them in this journey.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things when it comes to pain. There are many things that cause pain. So that's probably one of the starting points, just for people to be open and receptive to the idea of that pain is not just a physical sensation in the body. It's not the body telling the brain that we have pain. It's the brain telling the body that we have pain, and that there are so many sources of pain. And we just often think about like injury or we break a bone or something like that. But there are so many other sources. So that's one of the first things that we do. And then from there, I work on a 4-step system, basically a 4-part system. So the first one is about triggers, identifying your triggers. So tracking things, and triggers can be anything from food, the people that you are around, emotions, what's your movement pattern on a daily basis, how much are you moving? Like there are so many things that could be triggering your pain. So first step is to really track it and listen to your body and be aware of what is actually happening and how your body's responding. So that's the first thing. Then we work on inflammation and reducing inflammation, because inflammation causes pain in the body. And so again, knowing what causes the inflammation. So listening to your body, what's happening with the gut, what's happening with your digestion. And the inflammation part, really, I focus a lot on food. So there are foods that are very inflammatory. So gluten, dairy, soy, corn, and sugar. Those are the big 5.
The fun one.
And when I say that, people are like, oh my God, I can't eat anything. And so I always guide people, just give up sugar or reduce your sugar, 20 grams a day max. And let's start with that, because sometimes when I say all those, like those 5 food groups, people think, well, I can't eat anything, and they get overwhelmed. So just let's look at the sugar and let's reduce the sugar that you have in your day. And that will actually work to reduce a lot of the pain. And then the third thing we look at is mindset. And mindset in the sense of, one, like I mentioned before, being open to changes and being open to shifting your perspective and looking at things from a different way. Because everything that we've been doing up until this point has gotten us to this point. So opening our minds to maybe there's a different way, or there's a different way of looking at something or doing it, might be helpful. Also, the mindset piece of negativity. There's a lot of people that have a negative mindset, and if you're sitting in a negative state, then that's just where you're going to stay. That's what you're going to attract, and you're not going to get out of it. And it just becomes sort of this vicious circle, right? So really focusing on what people want for the future, what they want to change, and their ability to do that, because it's not about dedication. It's not about commitment. It's about consistency and desire. That's what I have experienced myself and with my clients. Like, that's what makes the difference. You can say you want to be pain free every day. You can say that to yourself, but until you take action, until you're consistent with the changes that you're making and you actually desire them and commit to them, they're not going to happen. So mindset is a huge piece. And then the fourth thing that we work on is stress reduction, because stress causes pain in the body. And it's interesting because many people that I work with, I'm going to say 9 out of 10 people that I work with, they'll say, I don't have any stress. I don't feel stressed. But the thing is that they are in chronic stress, but they always, like when we think about it at a level, let's say we're up here at stress and we always live at that point. So there's never any reduction of it. So it doesn't kind of come and go like waves. You know what I mean? Highs and lows. We don't have highs and lows. We're just high. We're just in stress mode all the time. So it becomes our equilibrium. It becomes our status quo. And we don't actually realize that we have stress because there's never a moment that we just come down from it. So really identifying what are the stressors, how are we going to manage those, and learning some tools and strategies for that. So those are kind of the 4 main things that I work with when I work with my clients, and things that I did myself to get out of the pain cycle. It sounds simple, but it's very, there's lots of steps to it, and each one is interlaced and they overlap each other. So the process though is that hopefully each person will have one little thing that they'll go, aha, that's the thing. That's the time that the moment that they hear it and they go, oh, okay, I can do that. Or yes, that seems like a simple solution. I can commit to that. And little by little, they move forward in their journey.
So what do you find is like the time frame that you typically work with folks before they start to, because I mean, it's hard to get a new habit in place, and all these things require new habits and behaviors. Mm-hmm. How long do you kind of touch base and nudge and push? And
yeah. So if you're starting to work with me, we do it. I have a 12-week program. That's how we do it. And we hit those 4 things that I mentioned to you already in that 12-week period. Now, that being said, it depends where you are in your journey. Are you just starting out? Probably you're not going to achieve all the things that you want in 12 weeks. So it always depends on the person, right? Like this is a very difficult question, Pamela, to answer, because where you are in your journey, how much you're putting into it, how committed you are to changing and really committing to the process, and how open you are to it will determine what's going on. The people that are around you and how they're influencing you, that might make it quicker or longer for you. So I've been with clients that, in the 12 weeks, they've made massive changes on their own. They've learned some tools and they go on their own and they use those tools and keep implementing them. And then they come back to me and do another 12 weeks. But I also have clients that have been with me for a year, because they've got a lot of stuff that they're working through. So it just depends on what it is that you are having to repattern, because that's what we're doing. We're repatterning the brain. We're repatterning our movement, our food. We're healing our gut. Like there's a lot of pieces. However, that being said, I have also had clients that have given up sugar. This is a good example, and I like using this. They gave up sugar for 1 week. And this is a very specific client I'm thinking of. And she had really bad arthritis in her hands, and she really couldn't move her hands without pain. In 1 week, she was actually able to make a fist and open and close her hands without massive pain. Did she still have pain? Mm-hmm. But it wasn't like before. And before, she wasn't really moving her hands at all. So in a week, because she committed, like she was in 100% and she gave up all sugar of any kind. So that was her commitment level. If you don't do that, then you might not get the same results. But that doesn't mean that there won't be an impact.
Yeah, giving up sugar in our house was huge. When you say giving up sugar, do you mean giving up like sugary things or anything that may metabolize into sugar in your body?
Yep. Yep. You got it. Yeah. So like bread, rice, noodles, potatoes, all those kinds of things. Yeah. Yep. And there's the other thing too that I say to people when they're doing their sort of tracking and looking at things. And if you're not going to give up sugar completely, I say, okay, that's fine. Like how about 20 grams a day? of sugar, and just track that. If you actually looked at some of the things that you eat, especially if you eat things that are in a package or sauces or salad dressings, things like that, like white bread has 2 grams of sugar. Why does white bread have, why, right? That's 2 grams. Well, if I eat bread 3 times a day, that's 6 grams of sugar. If I'm only having 1 slice. Peanut butter has sugar in it, right?
It's hard to find peanut butter and pasta sauce without sugar sometimes. So
it is, right? And so that's why, like you said, would it ideally, yes, in a perfect world, give it up completely. But if you're only having 20 grams a day, I think that for many people, that's a huge departure from what they're normally eating. So I think that there will be a significant impact by just changing those things, right?
There's been a lot of discussion, even in our family, around testing for food allergies. Do you find that you like some more than others, whether it's the back scratch, the blood tests? Do you find them helpful? Or, there's a lot of contradictory results. Like even in our own family, when we ran the blood test versus the scratch, there was different results, which was just wild. So then it's like, okay, so which one do you follow? Which one's real? And was it just because of something you ate in the last, so many days that triggers something else? And we just don't, I don't know. I find it hard to follow some of those tests unless it's consistently run and you just get the same consistent result. But
yeah, it is. And testing is really helpful. So I'll use myself as an example. I had a friend and she said, I think you have a gluten allergy. And okay, so I went and did the blood test for celiac, paid for that, blah, blah, blah. I'm not celiac, but I'm very, very sensitive to gluten. But I've also had the scratch test, nothing came up. Right? And so is that because my body changed? It's possible. So the testing is great. It gives you some guidelines. It gives you some things that you can say, okay, well, maybe I'm very, very allergic or very reactive to XYZ. Let's take it out of my rotation of eating and see what happens. So the testing is great as a guide. And if you don't really know what to do, it's fantastic because then you have something written that you can look at. But the other thing I would say on the flip side, as a compliment, or even in the same weighting, what is happening with your body? Like when you take things out, that's the key. To remove things, keep them out of the system for a little bit, then reintroduce them. Because then you can see what is happening. And this is where it's interesting because some people will say, well, I don't have any reaction to gluten. Oh, okay. Have you ever not eaten it?
Right.
Well, no, because I'm fine. Okay, so it takes 4 days for the average person to digest and eliminate gluten. That's if you have no allergy, if you have nothing going on. That's just what the body takes that long to process it. And so if you have some bread or noodles or whatever on Monday, that's not going to be out of your system till the end of the day on Thursday or Friday morning. That's almost the whole week. But then Tuesday you also had like a bagel, and then Wednesday so you're compounding the amount of gluten that's in your body, so you actually never have it out of your system. So how do you know that it's causing anything? Because the way you feel is normal, right? So people say bloating is normal, constipation is normal. Actually, it's not. You shouldn't be bloated. You shouldn't have constipation. If you do, something is happening. Could be food, could be poor sleep, could be hydration, could be, an allergic reaction. It could be stress. Like there's a lot of things that could cause those symptoms and those things to happen in the body. So you have to narrow it down. So really by eliminating is the easiest way to identify whether it's affecting you. So, short answer, testing is good, but also looking at your body and listening to it. And I think sometimes people forget to do that. They're like, well, I'm just always bloated. But you shouldn't be, right? There's a reason that you're bloated. What's going on in the stomach? What's going on in the intestines? What's happening here that you're actually bloated all the time? Because you really shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Makes sense?
So and then I believe step 2 was taking a look at the gut. Is that right? Or did I miss the order?
No. Triggers, okay. Inflammation, mindset, and then stress.
Okay. So let's talk about triggers and inflammation, because in my understanding, inflammation is the cause of all disease. So getting rid of inflammation is nearly impossible, but reducing it is certainly possible. And we even went to the extent of removing carpet out of our house. Just, it was one more thing that we could potentially control. But tell me a little bit about some of the things that you work with folks on in terms of identifying things in their environment or their diet that could be causing inflammation and how they can start to remove some of those.
Yeah. Yeah. So when it comes to inflammation, so I speak of it as a fibromyalgia person, someone who has osteoarthritis as well. Inflammation causes pain in the body. And so the more we can manage it and reduce it, the more we can manage and reduce our pain. So food, definitely, we look at food. Stress causes inflammation as well in the body. And so what are your stressors? So what the activity I give my clients is think about all the things that stress you out. Just write them down. Okay. And then I want you to think about stress in two categories: internal stressors and external stressors. There's lots of other research, but I make it simple. Internal, external. Internal are the things you can control. So your movements, your thoughts, your food, your mindset, whatever, your actions. External stressors are everybody else. So this podcast is an external stressor. So I'm not stressed to be here at all because I'm coming here, right, to help share some information with your audience. I hope that it's helpful for them. I'm giving everything that I can to your audience and to you. And in the end, the people that are your listeners and your viewers will either A, like me or don't like me. They'll think it's a great episode or a horrible waste of time. But I have no control over them and you, right? All I can do is control what I give when I'm here. So as far as stress, I don't have any stress to be on this podcast because I can't control the outcome of the viewers and listeners. I can only control me. Does that make sense? Yeah. So once you have your list, then you're going to go through it and you're going to write beside it an I if it's internal and an E if it's external. And many times we think external stressors are actually internal stressors, like my spouse, my children, COVID. COVID's a good example of something that's a stressor. But I don't control that. Like all I can control is my actions, right? So go through your list and label it internal or external. And then when you do that, you're going to cross off all the external stressors. Just take them off the list. And then you get to rewrite your list and you have an internal stressors list, which is going to be significantly smaller. I'm 100% confident of that than you started with, and just focus on reducing and making decisions about what you can control, because I can't control my coworkers. I can't control my kids. I can guide them. I can give them some information to make the best choices possible. But unfortunately, they're their own people, so they're going to make their own choices, right? So I know I say it in a very simplistic way, and I know it's not. But when we can kind of shift our perspective on looking at, okay, that's an external stressor. So why am I getting stressed about it? I literally can't control the outcome. So when you kind of get that shift happening, then you can actually look at managing a little bit better. And then that in turn will reduce your inflammation because the cortisol is not being released all the time, right? And you actually, hopefully then, will then go into those highs and lows of your stressors. And then you'll kind of go, oh, I am stressed, because you have the moments where you're actually at the low end and you feel good. Then when it spikes, you're like, okay. And that's what we need. We need to have that differentiation between the highs and lows, whether it's the stress or the inflammation or constipation or whatever we're talking about and measuring. You have to have the difference. And unless you have that, you can't really track it or measure it and make any changes.
Yeah. And I think too, it's stress can largely be a lot bigger in folks that are used to controlling their environment. They like to operate at a very high level all the time, and they're not used to not operating at a high level. And so carving out quiet time for yourself, or forcing yourself, I think, to have some downtime is pretty hard.
It is. And, for me, I spent 4 months in bed with a migraine and vision loss due to stress from work. Because I was one of those people. I was like a typical type A personality, controlled everything, stressed about everything even things I knew I couldn't control, still worried about them and tried to manage stuff. And I literally ended up losing vision and having a migraine for 4 months. I spent 4 months in bed because of it. And after that, I was like, you know what? There is nothing in the world that is worth that. It's just not worth it, because stress can cause so many problems in the body. And when I work with clients, honestly, that's probably one of the biggest things we work on. It's probably one of the hardest things we work on because, like you said, you're used to controlling everything, right?
Yeah. So how in the world do you help people through, is it meditation? Is it writing it down? Is it forcing yourself to have no electronics or a walk or nature? Or like, what is it that you can really help drive people to?
Yeah. So one, like I said, the internal, external, I'm making that list, right? That's one thing that we do for stress reduction. The other thing, I like meditation a lot. Most people are like, I can't meditate because it's really hard. And I used to think that as well. And my goal is not to be an expert meditator. My goal is to carve out 5 minutes in my day when I can just sit down and breathe. And I like guided meditation. So if people are having trouble with meditating, I like to listen to something that guides me through it. So whether it's, walking in the forest and I'm actually listening to someone walk me through a forest and what they see, I like to have guided. So if you're worried about not being able to meditate, it's not about stopping your brain. It's about focusing on something else. It's about letting those thoughts just pass through and not holding on to those worrisome thoughts. And so when the thought comes through, you say, thank you very much, and I'll think about that later, and just let it move on by like a cloud. So that's something, yes, meditation, definitely. Breath work is really important. So breathing, like honestly, if you just sit and breathe and focus on your breath, even for 1 minute, it brings all of that heightened emotional state and feeling. It just brings everything down. It just lowers everything and gives you a little bit of a break. So that's something that we do as well. I have what's called an it would be nice list. So we are surrounded, I think, in life by all the things we should do. And we make these lists. I don't know if you're a list maker, but many of us are list makers and you love the list. So 2 things about the list. You get 3 things on your list every day. That's it. 3. That's all that I know, right? And I was like, that's what I did.
I love sticky notes.
Yes, I love sticky notes too. So this is the thing. This is the reasoning behind it. Let me explain. So all you do is 3 things. So let's imagine, so I'm an entrepreneur, so I have a big project that I'm working on. So one of the things on my list is something, small thing, not the project. It's one small thing that will move me forward, okay, in that big project. That's one of my things. And then I have 2 small things, okay? It doesn't matter what they are. It's irrelevant. When I get those 3 things done, I am free to do anything else that I want that's on my list. But when I have a big long list and I've got like 10 items on it, and at the end of the day, I've only done 2 things, I feel defeated. But if I have 3 things on my list and then I have my it would be nice list. So it's a different list. So I did my 3 things. I'm like, awesome. It's only 2:00. I got time. I can do other things. I go to my it would be nice list. Are there things on here that I could actually do? Because I have time, and then I can finish those and cross them off. So then at the end of the day, I've done my 3, and then I've actually done 2 things from it would be nice. And then I can just move on with the next day. Same thing. 3 things. I have my it would be nice list. Let's be clear, Pamela, is gigantic. So it's a running list and there's always something on it. But when I have time, if I finish those 3 things, great, I can pick something else. The list making, we sometimes put everything on the list, right? And when it comes to the list, so this is my next tip, I have what's called the 3 Ds. Decide, delegate, or delete. That's what you're going to do with your to-do list. So you're going to decide that you're going to do it. It's your responsibility and you're not giving it away to somebody else. Number 2, you're going to delegate. So ask your kids, bring the laundry basket to the laundry room. Like honestly, because I think sometimes we don't get our family members involved and we feel that we have to take everything on. And we can't do it forever. We're exhausted and eventually you're going to be like, I'm done. Like, I'm out of the family. You guys figure it out. Mama's going away for a week. And I don't care what happened, right? You know what I mean? Like, because you're tired of doing everything and you just can't do it. So delegate, ask for help, give it to someone else. Like my husband, bless his soul, does the grocery shopping. I hate grocery shopping. I think it's a waste of time. I know I have to eat, but I don't want to grocery shop. So he does it. And it's lovely because I don't have to worry about that. He has the list. We make the list together. We decide what we're going to eat together, but he goes and does all of the shopping and then brings everything home. And I put it away. So he doesn't put it on. My job is to put it away. His job's to get the food, right? So that is something that while he's doing that, then I'm free to do something else. And I don't have to take that on. So delegate. And then the third thing is delete it completely. So I have in my studio, I have curtains in my studio. And for the longest time, I had on my it would be nice list is to have the curtains hemmed. And I'm like, I'm going to hem the curtains, right? Like, I don't know when I'm even going to have time to even. Anyway, it stayed on my list for a very long time. And then finally, I was like, you know what? They don't have to be hemmed. They don't have to be. It doesn't have to be done. It would be lovely if it were done, but I just am not going to do it. So I took it off my list. And then, you know what? The interesting thing that happened is I have a friend who is a sewer. And she was here one day and she came to the studio. She goes, do you need your curtains hemmed? I'm like, I do. And she's like, I can do that. I said, fantastic. How about I trade you a session for doing my curtains? She goes, absolutely. I'll take a coaching session. So she did all my curtains and I gave her a coaching session, and now it's not on any of my lists. But just that whole like releasing it, then somebody came in because it was something that I wanted done, but I just didn't worry about it, right? And then when the time was right, I got them done. So things like that happen. Yeah.
Some of the best advice I ever got was to think about your life and what really stresses you out. And for me, it was driving my kids around when they were younger. And I said, well, gosh, that really stressed me out. And a friend of mine says, so hire somebody else to do it. And I'm like, no, the money and and she said, do the kids really care that you're driving them around? And I said, I don't know. I mean, I would think that they'd be upset if their mother wasn't with them driving them to their activity. And she's like, do me a favor, hire somebody from care.com for 2 weeks.
Yep.
Just try it out. And it was, and I never went back. It was the best thing ever. Then there's no more arguing, no more fighting the traffic, no more whatever. Yep. And I would meet them at the activity and then I would take them home and we'd have dinner and it's all fine.
Yeah.
So it's funny how you get so caught up in what I should be doing that you don't really think about, is that really going to make me happy? And does it really make a difference?
Yeah. And it's, you know what? It's so true. And we use money or lack of money as the excuse for not doing things a lot of the times, right? Well, I can't afford that. Okay. But have you looked at that? Like, what is your time worth? Like, that's the other thing too. What is your time worth? And when you're not sitting in traffic to take the kids, like, again, you're trading your time to be able to do something else while someone is taking your kids to the activity, and then you go afterwards, right? So you can considering how much time that takes from traffic and driving and then the activity itself, you could free up an hour, hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours. Man, you can get a lot of stuff done in 2 hours when you don't have to be there, go through the traffic and sit while they're doing the whole activity. Because yes, we want to be there for our kids, but do you have to be there for every single time they're at the practice or whatever? No, you don't. They're busy doing their thing. They're happy when they see you at the end of the day, at the end of that activity, and mom or dad is there to pick them up. That's what they're happy about. And then they're like, oh my God, this is what happened today. Blah, 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 right? And that's what they want you there for. And yes, you can sometimes be there, but yeah, free up your time. Hire it out. Get a meal delivery service. Get a grocery delivery service. Grocery shopping takes up a lot of time. Laundry service, if you like. And you don't have to do it all the time. It can be once a week, twice a week. It doesn't have to be all the time. So there are ways. I think sometimes we think about it as an all or nothing thing, and it's not. It doesn't have to be all the time. It can just be once a week, right? And then that gives you that little break from whatever that activity is.
Yeah. So talk to me about, do you have any favorite supplements or recipes that you like to follow in terms of things that you think are great for anti-inflammatory, for the gut?
Yeah, so I'm really big on, like eating the rainbow is really important, right? So peppers are great. Berries are great. I personally, because I can only speak from my experience, I am gluten-free, and gluten is just unreal for me. It's really, really bad. And so I stay away from that. And I stay away from dairy because dairy really causes inflammation and lots of digestive issues for me. Supplements, I'm a big believer in magnesium. Everybody should be taking magnesium. We create magnesium, but we also burn it off as the first thing when we feel stress. So if you're in any kind of chronic stress, you need magnesium. Great to help with sleep as well. Vitamin D is great. The B complex is good as well. And zinc. Those are kind of my big supplements if you're going to take something. When it comes to recipes and things like that, I'm going to put everything together in the pot kind of girl. Like if you have a slow cooker or an Instapot or like even a sheet pan, right, in the oven, just All the vegetables, all the meat, all the things go on one pan and you stick it in the oven. So that to me is, you can make food flavorful with different spices, right? But I don't have to make it super fancy to make it delicious. So I think that the easier you can make it, as far as ingredients and things, I have very simple ingredients. I don't have a lot of fancy sauces or anything like that, because oftentimes there's a lot of sugar, which triggers my inflammation, but I don't really like it. So I guess there's that bonus too, right? If you don't really like something, then you don't have to worry about it. But yeah, sheet pan things, casseroles, things like that, they're kind of comforty food as well, but you can put everything in them. And I find too with things like that, or stews or soups or things that you put lots, you can get your family to eat vegetables because it's in the thing, but there's also other stuff in there. So they're not eating just broccoli. They're eating it with the other spices and foods. So it kind of blends together a little bit better, hides it, I guess is the best way to say it. And then they'll actually eat it. They're more likely to eat it.
No, that's super. Any last words of advice for folks? How do they find out more about you? Anything in terms of aging adults, children, anybody in between?
Yeah. So if you want to find me, you can find me on Instagram. Fran Garton Pain Coach is where I am. And you can check my website, frangartoncoaching.com. And I'm happy to chat with you about anything. And the thing that I would say to people is, there's a couple things. Number one, it doesn't have to be perfect. It never has to be perfect, and it should never be your goal to be perfect. I'm not perfect, and that should never be the goal. The goal is to make tomorrow better than today, whatever that looks like for you. And everybody's journey is different. So even though there are many components that are the same, we look at the same things, the way that we work together or the way that you move forward will be different for me than it is for you, because we are in our own individual situations. So don't compare yourself to everybody else, because you might be comparing yourself to someone who's been on a journey for like 5 years. Well, yeah, they're way farther ahead of you. Yeah, because they've been doing it for 5 years, right? So think about you and how can you make your life better. And the one thing that I would say, the one question that I would ask people to ask themselves, if nothing else, nothing changes in your life from how it is today, are you happy? Is that enough for you? And if the answer is no, then there needs to be something that changes. So pick one thing today, small thing, and make that your consistent change for the next month.
I love that. Thank you, Fran.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much for being with us. We truly appreciate it.
That's it for this episode of Encouraging Wellness. We hope this serves as an eye-opener to you on new ways to approach your health and wellness. By learning both unique and the best alternative wellness and healing methods, you can live your best life. Listen to more of our episodes at www.hello.health. Be sure to subscribe to the show and leave a rating. Together, let us work towards unlocking you and your family's best self. Thank you for listening. See you on the next one.